I'm the founder and director of Swipe Right PR. We specialise in esports communications, and some of our clients are Riot Games, Face It, Red Bull, and most recently Team Vitality. Joining me today is Nicolas, the CEO of Team Vitality, Sophia, the CEO of Meltdown, Jonathan, the executive director of National Student Esports, and Tatiana, the CMO from WePlay Esports. Why don't we start with you guys giving yourselves a quick introduction, who you are and your experience within the grassroots scene. Nicolas?
So I'm Nicolas, I'm the CEO of Team Vitality that I founded with my co-founder 6 years ago. And then right now we're the biggest esports team in France, one of the biggest in Europe. We have players on 10 different teams and a lot of partners, mainstream brands. And when it comes to grassroots esports, I mean, it's part of our daily job to try to find new talent and lead them to the path to pro, and that's what we'll be discussing today.
Great.
So I'm Sophia, Metz. I founded Meltdown esports bars back in 2012 with the idea to bring gamers together in a bar to create a social bond between gamers and not just play alone at home. And we grew to a network of almost 30 bars now in 8 different countries. So yeah, grassroots is basically what we do every day. We see the gamers and the community every day.
So my name's Jonathan Tilbury. I run National Student Esports, NSE. We are the official body for university esports here in the UK. We're partnered with the governing body for university sport, and they provide us with access to their infrastructure to roll out a programme of competition to universities nationally. And before this role, I worked for game retail for 3 years, where I helped develop and roll out the Belong gaming arena concept into about 20 locations, which is very much focused on grassroots esports.
I'm Tatiana Zheltomirska. I'm CMO of WePlay Esports. We're a tournament organizer, and mostly we organize Tier 1 tournaments. But last year we started Tier 2 tournaments, which are a lot about grassrooting, and there are very vivid examples of that already. After our first season, we had 2 very bright and interesting teams that made themselves known on the professional scene very soon after their appearance in our league. One of them you probably know is Avantgarde, who recently won Blast Pro Series, and a week before that were second after Australis in the last major. So they actually won our last season. We also had an interesting case with complete underdogs that just appeared in our tournament and actually challenged Avantgarde and had 3 overtimes, and then we had an extensive interview with them, and they explained how much they gained being able to play on a professional career or on a professional stage in a professional setting with the lights, with the live audience, how much it gave them in terms of the how would I put it, in terms of feeling in that professional situation, in that professional atmosphere, because they're very nervous when they first go to a stage with a lot of people watching them with the lights, and they lose their they start to become very nervous. They lose each other. They start to make mistakes during the game. So they explained that was crucial for them to move on, and actually they made it to the group stage of the recent majors. So starting from the first season, we see how good, how valuable that is for the industry, this experience. So we continue on. This October we're going to continue with this league, and next year we're going to have 3 more seasons of the league.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think if we start by looking at sort of how the industry was built, and esports is really it's only really developed in the last several years, if that. And we started by developing the pro scene first, which is the complete opposite of how the sports industry has been built, right? Like mainstream sports were always built from grassroots up. Why do you think we started like that? Why did we work in reverse? Nicolas, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, maybe it comes down to the situation where publishers that started to get interested in esports like Riot or communities that took care of, let's say, building esports themselves. In the case of open games like Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, very quickly they were still very amateur. So in a sense, we could say they were grassroots, but they were still the top level competition. So we started structuring this way because people were watching and wanting to watch the top players. Whereas maybe in sports, you can go to your local tournament or local city, see a game. It doesn't really exist in esports. You have access to every game. So you can try to watch, and you want to try to watch the best player. So the people were interested in the best player that formed the teams, and then it started this way. And then some publisher took interest in that. For example, Riot trying to organize its own league. And of course, they wanted to promote the best competition, the best player. So it started because it's a digital environment, and that's the way people connected and wanting to watch the best competition possible. And then now we are only thinking about grassroots, and it was not even a topic a few years back.
I have to disagree just a little bit with the statement that we started the other way around, because I think esports come from gaming, which started with just playing in your room and just grassroots basically. But of course the professional side of things came after, and I think that was obviously because of the internet making it so easy to connect together. But still, I don't think we'd be where we are now if we didn't start like decades ago with playing on a console with our like little brother or older sister, whatever. So yeah, I think grassroots been the basis for everything we have now.
I think, as you both kind of said, it's ultimately down to the technology and the fact that we're a globally connected community. If you look at traditional sport and traditional broadcasting techniques, they are regionalised. If I wanted to broadcast a sports competition on television, I'd start by doing that at a national level or at a regional level. Whereas with esports, there's a direct adjacency between the technology required to broadcast the competition and the competition itself. It's all taking place in a digital environment, and it's broadcast digitally through online streaming platforms. So you've got the ability to access a global audience from the get-go. And so we immediately went global, and we immediately started focusing on the talent that was right there at the top from a global perspective. And actually that's easier in an esports world than doing stuff at a regional level. I think unless we're doing something physically, we really struggle to regionalize esports, and that can be problematic when we're interacting with brands that aren't set up to do that, for example, where they're focused on kind of regional marketing budgets and things like that. It can actually be problematic.
Well, I also think that, regional offices of brands push us to do that as well, right? Go back to regions, go back to regional communities, because it's difficult to talk to a brand when you have a global viewership, but actually if you look at the structure of marketing of all those companies, yes, they are global offices, but still they take care of their regions, and they have to make sure that the viewership that they are buying belongs to a certain region, while you try to sell them a global audience, which is kind of, very vague for them. So I think there's a push from brands to go back and try to build regional communities that would respond to the needs of the brands locally. But at the same time, I agree with you completely that it was a huge leap, right? And now we have to go back and do something with this gap. I mean, your bedroom playing right with the friends, and then these first tier teams that are now unattainable completely, right? How do you get there? How you become that cool to become interesting for Team Vitality, for instance? How do you get there? How do you get into their site?
So does that in a way explain, I suppose, the growth of a load of regional leagues that we've seen over the last year-ish, right? Like Riot's starting to introduce a regional league system. The fact that you're seeing more European offices open. Meltdown bars are absolutely everywhere, and you guys have been a hub for the community for years as well. Is it that sort of level of accessibility that's really kind of helping this movement into the grassroots scene? Do you think, Sophia?
I think so. I mean, I think for a game to last in esports, it needs to have communities like just taking on the game and creating like content and creating events, and people just want to be able to just attend esports events and to live esports without having to travel to the other end of the world, you know. So when we started like 8 years ago, there were like 2 major esports events in the year, you know, one League of Legends and one StarCraft, and that's it, you know. So you had to go there to meet your gamer friends, and it's out of a personal need that I actually created Meltdown, because I wanted a place where I could go and meet other gamers on a daily basis and not just at these events. So definitely we're like the small bar next door where you can just go and meet other people who share the same passion for esports, and I think that's really a need that exists globally for local places, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And what I think we're still really early in terms of developing and you know, the maturity of the grassroots community. We almost went through a phase of sliding backwards, especially here in the UK. If we look at grassroots tournament participation at events like Insomnia, which takes place in Birmingham, it's been going for over 20 years. Actually, grassroots tournament participation has decreased as esports has grown. And you know, I think it's a focus on the kind of the upper echelon of esports, and that kind of decline in the sense of accessibility to actually becoming a top player that's perhaps driven that. And now I think what we're seeing is kind of an explosion of realization that actually there is this huge opportunity around grassroots, and actually in order to support the top of the pyramid, we need to build out that middle tier so that there is a pipeline of talent, but also so that journey is exciting. It's not, for me personally, it's not actually exciting when a player comes out of nowhere and is suddenly playing on a top team. It's exciting when a player goes through a journey that the commentators at a major global tournament can then talk about where that player has come from and how they've got there. And it's exciting for the person that's just picked up the game and has dreams of being an esports player, for them to be able to visualize what that journey looks like. That's really important. So I don't like to focus on grassroots as existing to support the top of the pyramid, because I think it's so much more, and I think that the majority of players, certainly in our university competition, their aspiration is not to be a professional player. They are playing in the competition because they're having a good time and they're meeting like-minded people. But for a lot of, I think it is important that we have that grassroots scene, and we have a healthy grassroots scene, so that we are feeding talent across.
I think there was a recent article by in Polygon which discussed the challenges of the skill development pipeline, which is basically that path that we're talking about, like what is the direction that a player should go in. Why has that been so difficult to create that path? Like what are the barriers to entry that we've seen so far?
I think it really depends on game by game basis, because on some games the path is more clear, especially in games where you have a ladder. League of Legends, for example, you know that part of the path is try to be on the top of the ladder, be a challenger. That's not enough to be a pro. That doesn't make you a pro ready for a pro environment, but at least people will notice you. So this path is quite clear in a way, whereas on other games, open games, for example, Counter-Strike, how do you get people to notice you, be part of a smaller amateur team, then maybe climb up the ranks, go up and up. It's kind of complicated for the younger players or the aspiring pro players to understand, but ultimately only a handful of person will be pro, because that's just what it is. It's a pyramid, and you have maybe, 100, 200 pros in League of Legends in Europe, and you have millions of players. So first of all, the younger people and the aspiring players need to realize that it's very complicated, not impossible to be a pro. It shouldn't prevent you to try your best if you think you have it. But then the question is about what's the structure around. Because right now, let's say you want to be a pro. First of all, you need to be aware of the difficulty. In sports, most people realize you want to be a pro player in football, you understand that it's very unlikely. In esports, the younger people, they don't realize that, first of all. We receive tons of messages every day. How can I be part of Vitality? And they're not sending message to Real Madrid to say, how can I be part of Real Madrid? They're not even realizing how difficult it is to be a pro, because that's we need to educate on that, first of all. And then when we have correct education on that part, we need to create, and when I say we, it's all of the parts of the ecosystem, we need to create the structure around. So, okay, you're talented, you're young, you want to be a pro. We should give you the tools to try. And do your best effort to prove you can have it. But most of the people that do that, they will fail. It's just a simple math. Only a few of them will succeed. So we need to create the same structure like exists in sports, where you can try, you can have the tool half of the day you can train, and the other half you get education and you get a degree. And if you succeed, it's good. But most of those guys, they won't succeed, and it's fine. Then you bounce back to your normal education. As long as you have the chance to try, you have everything, you have the infrastructure to try your best and try to be a pro, it's good. But the structure is lacking at the moment. So what exists is you have, let's say, crooks or scams of schools that say, hey, you join my school and you will be a pro. You wouldn't say that in sports. Join my school and you will be Cristiano Ronaldo. No one believes that. In esports, it exists, so it's crazy. So we need to make sure we create the right structure so we get away with those schools that doesn't make any sense. At the moment, it's so confusing that so we need a lot of steps to educate and create the structure, basically.
And Jonathan, I'm kind of looking at you for that, really.
Hi.
So whose responsibility is that, really? So we've got a whole array of fantastic panelists here. So we've got, the team owner, we've got an organizer, we've got someone on the educational side. I'm sure you're all weighing in from a very different point of view, but Jonathan, maybe from the side.
I don't think it's anyone's responsibility per se. I think it's something that there is an interest in everyone developing. And in fact, it would be nice to see more investment people in the audience, because I think the grassroots community is hugely exciting, not from the perspective of it supporting the top of the pyramid. It is exciting as a standalone proposition. The engagement that we see in universities is absolutely tremendous, right? So university competitions are the biggest grassroots competitions in this country. I haven't researched, fact-checked this, but I'd speculate in the world. And the motivation of the players is different to what you see when you look at amateur tournaments outside of the university space. We did a sort of study a few years ago at Game when we were developing the Belong concept. We actually had BCG come in and work with us looking at player motivations and the psychology behind people entering esports tournaments. And what we found was that the majority of players won't enter an esports tournament because they don't think they're good enough. And this kind of goes back to what I think you were just saying. In traditional sports, you go through this journey. You can be the best player at school, and then you become the best player in your region, and then the best player in your country, and then you access the world stage. And because esports is a largely digital environment, you go from the beginning, theoretically, you go from the beginning right the way to the end. So how do you visualize that journey? And I've completely lost my train of thought. But the university space is totally different. In fact, the educational space as a whole, because the motivation for people to play is not, I want to be the best. The motivation is, I want to meet like-minded people. And so when you run a competition that is not about having a huge prize pool, that is not about becoming a pro player, it's actually the focus of the competition is on enhancing their social experience at university, a place that can be quite intimidating for people when they start and they need to make friends. You see participation absolutely skyrocket. So I don't think it's anyone's responsibility. I don't think it's something a problem that industry needs to come together to solve. I think there is a financial interest in people developing this space because it's hugely exciting. It's, for me, is as exciting as the top of the pyramid. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Great answer. So just in terms of what's currently being done, what are the opportunities out there? And it's not really just about scouting talent, right? Like, it's also about the other wider opportunities that you're talking about, giving people the opportunity to meet like-minded individuals or to help create a tournament structure as well. What is out there at the moment? Maybe Tatiana, you could lead with some of the examples from WePlay.
Well, we also see that, for instance, in Ukraine, where our company is based, we also see some initiatives going to schools, to universities, because there you would see these communities that will gladly participate. We also see that Red Bull, for instance, as being very native to the esports environment. They're also starting to do grassrooting things, and their aim is also to go to universities, not to schools, but to they're limited with their brand as well, to go to universities and try to start low. Their idea is definitely to grow their love for their brand as well as to grow their love for the competition. Otherwise, I wouldn't say that I see a lot of initiatives from commercial companies. So I think it has to be, I don't know, a joint effort, because on the commercial level, it's a difficult initiative. There's an easy explanation why everybody wants to do Tier 1 tournaments, because they're viewed better, right? Plus, community does not expect yet to be of somebody to do, or a company to do very professional broadcasting of that. And we did a very professional broadcasting and continue to do that, just because our product has to be that way. We cannot allow for any of our products, even if the viewership is lower, to be less professional, because it's our reputation, it's our brand, which we are carefully building. But it's difficult in a way to commercialize it. So,
The thing is, like in most sports, most viewers, they will want to see the best possible competition. And then when you look at the second tier level, it's only the hardcore fans that will want to watch every content. In CS, you have some people that want to see every tournament, but most people, they will want to see the major, the biggest tournament. So you have either you cater to those hardcore fans, but it's a limited niche, or we go to the regionalization, which is what Riot is doing. And okay, if you do local leagues, then you can create another way of getting people interested. You see the people from your country, it's casted in your language, it's a venue in your country. So the regionalization might be one of the ways you get people interested and ultimately monetize. But if you only go with a global scope and having a second division, of course, then it's difficult to monetize and get people interested.
Sure.
So I think Riot's approach on that is kind of smart. Yeah.
So just slightly controversial question. Do you think the perception of video games has an impact on how people are entering the scene? Do you think that, we see a lot of parents heading to tournaments with sort of players for like the major or like the LEC. Do you think that level of support is needed? And do you think maybe sort of the education of the entire industry is needed to kind of help support the system?
I think it's just a matter of time. Like parents, they bring their kids to the Sunday football game. It's normal, it's part of the culture. Right now it's very strange for them to bring their kids to a video game tournaments, because to them video game is just their kid playing in his room. They don't really understand how it's evolving. So I think on that regard it's just people's perception slowly changing. And also it's our role, all of us, to kind of deconstruct all of the cliche about video game. And I think in that regard, esports kind of is doing well to go against all of the bad things you would associate with video games. Like, for example, people not, let's say, being in their coach, eating junk food. When you look at esports, you see more and more, you see athletes well prepared, well trained with physical, mental coaches, at least is the trend in the industry. So I think what we're all doing in esports goes in the right direction to make sure people's perception of video game and esports is changing.
Well, I'm serving alcohol to esports fans. So
maybe you're not the right one or the right example. but still what you're doing is having people come, drink a beer and watch an entertainment. It's no different than sports. It's just people are not used to that.
Yeah, people are getting used to it anyway, because gamers are getting older, they're having children. I think all of us esports fans should have more children to make sure that the next generations are, raised well. But I think it will just, as Nico said, just a matter of time, yeah.
Well, we as part of our partnership with the governing body for university sport, we are invited every year to talk at a conference to senior university decision makers. And it's an opportunity for us to almost survey the kind of sentiment in the room, look at how their attitudes are changing as we develop our program and deliver our program, and what impacts we're having on them. And what we see is that they are, it's completely bipolar. You have universities that look at this and do not understand at all what is going on and have no interest in it because they cannot even begin to visualize what the opportunity is. And that really is the stigma of gaming, I think, that sits behind that. And then we have universities that are totally opposite, who see this huge opportunity to engage with students, to engage with a broader range of students as well. I think what we see through our competition and by engaging with the players is, we have the captains of the basketball and football teams playing in our competition, but we also have students who aren't comfortable participating in traditional team sport at university. And so for us, we're a way of the universities reaching a much broader group and engaging a much broader group of students. Similarly, it's not a surprise that the universities that do the best in our competition tend to have a high percentage of international students, which universities traditionally find quite hard to reach. And so we give them a platform for doing that. And so those universities see it and they look past the stigma and they see all of the opportunity, and that's fantastic. But we definitely, I would say it's 50-50. There are very few universities in the middle, and we really do suffer from that stigma around gaming. I think what we're definitely seeing, though, is that is changing, because the next generation, you look at, for example, YouTube culture, the gaming influencers are entangled with, traditional sports influencers, with things like makeup influencers and general lifestyle influencers. And so with a younger generation, we're seeing, and who will reach universities in a few years' time, we're seeing a very different gender balance to what people expect when they think of gaming. We're seeing all of the stereotypes completely disappear. So I think we do very much suffer from it at the moment, but I think we're on a natural path for that to correct over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, I also think that we have to go to traditional media, we have to go to mainstream media, and we need to explain parents. Psychologically, people take aggressively what they don't understand. So we have to explain that that's the way children bond these days. That's the way they build relations. They just cannot stop it from happening. It's just that there's less understanding between children and their parents, and being together with them and understanding their world lets parents find the ways to be closer to their children. So if we talk to parents that way, I recently talked to a girl who we actually interviewed for a job in our company, and she said that she did a huge long read in a lifestyle magazine. They interviewed a psychologist, they interviewed parents, they interviewed gamers, and they did a very, very big article on that. And the viewership was amazing. Like, parents are interested and they're ready to read about it. They want to know, they want to understand their children and be part of that. So we just have to explain it there where they are, in mainstream media, in lifestyle media, go on TV.
It's true that even the media have these stereotypes, so when we started Meltdown, we were the first of our kinds, we were the first esports bar ever, so we got a lot of attention from the media, like press, radio, TV, etc. And they all came to us with this idea. First of all, gamers are not supposed to be social, so it's weird to have that place for them to meet. And they wanted to see what is that place where weirdos are playing at night instead of going out in clubs, And every time they would write a paper, it would be a great paper saying, I've never seen a place that's social, because in a regular bar, you just don't talk to the guy at the next table, unless you have very specific reasons. So here, everybody's just talking. At least in France,
we don't do that. Yeah. Maybe in the UK, people are more open.
and everybody's just interacting, and you see people. I mean, we've seen so many couples form at Meltdown. People asking each other to marry. People just buying each other a drink because there was a good action on the game or something. And there is this huge social component that the media ignore and that people from the outside don't see. So yeah, I think it's a work from everyone to show that to the world.
I think, case in point on that, we crossed this threshold the other day where we had more university teams playing in our competition than traditional sports had playing in the inter-university sports league. And the Telegraph ran an article on it. They found it really interesting. So right there in a national newspaper, and the headline was "Revenge of the Nerds," which basically says everything about how it's perceived. The article itself was good, but they needed that hook to actually get people reading the article, because that's how they view public perception of gaming.
Yeah, but we should not be too hopeful that media understand that quickly, because they're still, let's say, saying video games with a lot of cliche. It's changing, and frankly, the treatment of video game as a whole compared to what it was 10 years ago, it's way better, but you still read a lot of stupid things when it comes to video game being violent, and in the US recently we heard a lot about that, so it's still there. So when it comes to esports, maybe it will take another 10 years, so we should not rely on media, we should do our thing, and it will change eventually, also with having younger journalists that know the topic, so it will take time.
Before we move on to Slido, I'm just going to ask one final question, looking towards the future. So what can we do to guarantee that sustainable ecosystem that we're all after now?
So from a professional team point of view, I think there is this clear misconception that I touched on, that it's hard to detect talent. I don't think it's hard. What's hard is find people and make sure they can transition properly from amateur player to the pro player, and that path is complicated and doesn't really exist right now. So how do you prepare that young talent to be a team player in a team environment with a coach? They have to respect the coach authority, they have to see VOD of the game, work on the strategic side, where that changes all of a sudden, because 2 days ago, they were in the bedroom playing the game, and they were maybe one of the top players on the server, so they felt they are a big star, but they are not a pro player yet. So that path between amateur to pro player, it's not in terms of skills, because you can find a lot of very skilled players, but transitioning them from just a skilled individual to a pro player that understands what it takes to be a pro, that understands that it's a job of not only playing, training, communicating, and also representing a brand. So this exists in sports, where when you're young, people detect you as a good talent, then you will integrate specific paths, and when you will learn about team environment, being pro, and so on. In sports, it's a clear path. Again, in esports, it's all of a sudden you transition from the amateur to the pro. So that is what we need to work on as a professional team, and make sure we are here to create this path and help. That's for the team point of view.
Jonathan?
I think we need to, like I said earlier, stop viewing it. Grassroots esports isn't going to be sustainable if it's viewed as a necessary, its primary purpose is as a necessary platform for players to reach the top. It very much does that, but it also, people need to look at it as a, like I said earlier, a standalone opportunity in itself. From an investment perspective, from a business perspective, it's a really exciting space, and there are so many opportunities, and there are so many ways that you can approach it. It's not all about creating the next generation of talent. That should be something that it does as a byproduct of allowing people to just have a great time, and perhaps some wider social purpose as well. And I think once we embrace that, then we can create sustainable businesses that do feed the top of the pyramid.
I completely agree. I think it's a mistake to think Grassroots is just about becoming a pro player. So there's so many more players that are bad than the good ones, and they still want to have fun playing, and they have no interest in joining a tournament if they know they're not going to win anyway, and they're not going to have fun because they just be out after a round or something. And I think publishers understand it more and more. So we work with a lot of game publishers to organize tournaments for the communities, and a lot of them start asking us not to just reward the winner, but actually to create random prizes, like the guy that made the longest distance to come to the tournament, or just have a pub quiz to decide for the winner for something else. And because people all want to participate and not everybody can win, and we see that with weekly events. So if every week you have the same tournament and the same community is coming and the same person is winning every time, they will just lose interest and they won't come after the third or fourth week, So you have to find ways to integrate them. We have what we call Meltdown City Clash, which is a tournament between all of the different bars in the different cities. And usually we have around 1,500 players in real time in the bars, just from all kinds of locations. And when we have these tournaments, we have these rules, like you have to leave your chair if you die in an FPS game, for example, or something that allows everybody to play even just for a little while, and everybody to feel like they're participating in this global effort. And I think getting the publishers and the brands to understand that what makes esports is not just the top players, even though they're great, but also everyone else and all the viewers, but also all the players that just want to have fun. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I agree. I also agree that there are little places that stay empty. So every empty place finds finds people to find a way to to fill them. So I think it's just the beginning of the development of the industry. Industry is on the really very early stages of development, so it will all come just eventually. But the hype is so high that, you know, it will come soon, very soon. I mean, there are so many companies trying to be part of that. Traditional companies trying to branch into esports, or just newcomers, or just players, you know, getting education, but having that early ages background. They want to be part of that industry because they loved it as kids so much. So I think there are so many ways how the industry will be fulfilled with bright ideas. So we just need to wait and see how it all develops.
Thank you very much. We've got only a few more minutes to answer a couple of questions from Slido. So let's start at the top. How do you think esports can have a positive impact on mental health for individuals within Grassroots? Anyone want to start with that?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like sports is not expert on mental health or anything, but if you socialize and if you bond through esports and through gaming competition, it only can do good. And if you meet people with the same passion at every level, and we're not talking about trying to be pro, but just interact and having the lowest level of competition can only be positive as long as you do that with people. So.
Yeah, at least we take kids out of their bedrooms, right? Which is already healthy. Yeah. In terms of psychological health, right?
So, you know, if the digital schoolhouse guys were here, I think they'd be talking about some of the stats that came out of their competition. I think they found that, and I might be making the statistics up, so don't quote me, but it was something in the region of 80% of the students that played in their essentially high school's competition actually said that they were more likely to participate in a team sport at the school level. Not a team e-sport, but a team sport, because it gave them a sense of confidence. Now, I may be cheating the question there, because you could argue that's not mental health, but I think it shows the power of esports to be leveraged for good. Obviously, like I said, our audience is hugely broad. What we found is hugely broad. So from a neurodiversity perspective, I think esports is a really effective tool. And there was something else I was thinking of, but I completely forgot.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even though it's less and less true with gaming becoming more popular and more mainstream, I still think there is a little bit of truth to the stereotype that says that a lot of gamers can be introverts, and I think that creating this social bond within gaming is really important. There is a survey that we have every year towards our community, and usually we have between 4,000 and 5,000 people answering. And one of the questions is, do you usually go out in bars other than Meltdown? And 50.4% say no, I don't go out to any other bars. I mean, it's great for us, but it still shows a trend. Of course, the 4,000 who reply are the most hardcore fans for Meltdown, so it's biased. But still, I think creating places where gamers can meet just helps them become more social, and then just, you know, live a life like anyone else, you know. Feels like therapy. Thank you for listening to me.
And really quickly as well, there's a huge opportunity with esports to help with things like old age loneliness, which I don't think many people acknowledge, but I think Lenovo did an amazing marketing campaign around it with, I think they called it the Silver Surfers, where they put together a team of elderly people. I'm not sure what the PC word is for elderly people. Elderly people to play in an esports competition with each other, and I think they found that had a really positive impact on kind of things like old age loneliness. So I think, you know, esports can potentially solve some problems like that it isn't traditionally applied to.
I think we've got time for just one more. Why do you think so few girls and women have even heard of esports? What is the opportunity? I've made an answer for that, but I will let you guys.
So this question deserves not 1 minute, but maybe a full panel, and it's a question that comes to every panel about presence of women in esports, and it's rightfully so, because it's painful to see that there's basically zero female or close to zero female pro player, where at the bottom of the pyramid on most of the game you could see close to 50-50 when it comes to gender spectrum. So I think it's a huge industry challenge that we need to have women at every step of the pyramid, and it will take a lot of time, because there is a lot of, let's say, cultural issues, in the sense that, first of all, the cliche of video game associated with men still exists. Second, for a lot of parents, if their boy come to them and say, I want to be a pro player, they will look very strangely to their kid. But if it's a young girl, they cannot even imagine. So they have to go this step. And then when you have amateur teams of only male, most of the time they will put let's say they will criticize if there is a player coming playing in the team way more than she deserves just because she's a girl. So the girls have way more to overcome to be pro players. So we see that at every pass of the step, every step of the pyramid to go to pro, there are more challenges and more hurdles for women. And this is let's say a wide industry issue that we all need to work on solving, but it won't happen overnight. It will take a lot of time. And the question is worded like, so few girls and women even heard of esports. I don't think it's true. I think when it comes to viewership, it's skewed. Of course, there are more men than women watching esports, but there are still a lot of women in the public and the audience, as you were pointing out. But it's a vast topic.
Answer that, so if you want to, go ahead. But.
Oh, well, no, I think it's difficult to cover in 1 minute, definitely.
And 0.0.
And we are out of time. So thank you all. And thank you all for coming along.